Okay, so one of the things we want to do with this is a little bit of gaming. We're going to use it as a high-end DOS gaming system as well as an early Windows 95 gaming system. So let's go straight for the DOS effect. So on here we've got some DOS games. We've got Duke 3D, we've got Duke 1 and 2, so the platforms. We've got Wing Commander 3. I'm not sure how that's going to work. We've got Doom. We've got Grand Prix 2 on there as well. And we've got DOSBENCH. So let's go straight for that. So DOSBENCH is from Phil's Computer Lab. He's kind of curated this set of benchmarks that were popular back in the DOS days, and this is the list. So we're just going to go through them one at a time and see how the system performs. So as you'd expect for a 233 MHz Pentium MMX, it's pretty fast compared to the kind of level that this app was written for. So this was kind of 386 and 486 level performance is what they were expecting. So it's thinking we've got 66.6 frames per second, which sounds like it might be hardware limited somewhere. Let's try number 2. So yeah, so that's running at 163.3 frames per second, which is a bit more what I would expect. Okay, let's do Chris's 3D benchmark. So it's going to have a massive performance on this, yeah, 143 frames per second. Let's go up a resolution. So quite a performance drop. It's dropped down to 39 frames per second, a score of 65. Okay, PC player, let's have a little look at that. So you can see where the inspiration from this was. So this is at 320 by 200. So that's the kind of resolution you have to drop down to in the original VGA spec to get a decent set of colours. Okay, Playbench 56.8. Let's do the same but a full VGA in a Super VGA mode. Looks significantly better at 640 by 480, but it's moving around 4 times as many pixels, because you double the resolution this way and double it this way, so 4 times as many pixels. And that's given us 17.9. Now the monitor's warming up, it's stretching a little bit. So about 18 frames a second. Okay, let's do some Doom. These are the benchmarks, obviously. So it's going to power through this. Yeah, 285 frames per second. So we probably don't ever want to run Doom in very low res. Let's try Doom in a more realistic configuration. I have to rewind that, but I think there was some artifact going on earlier on. Now whether that's always been there, or whether that's particular for this particular run. So yeah, so over 80 frames a second. So pretty decent scores for something that's relatively contemporary. Quake, now that's going to give us quite a lot more headache in terms of performance. So what's the performance going to be like? Do you know what? It looks slightly better than I was expecting it to. Okie doke. So 51 frames per second. That's actually not bad. That was slightly better than I was expecting. Right, that was Quake in a low resolution. Let's try it a little bit more taxing. So let's go straight for 640 by 480. You know, that's not bad, is it? .4 frames a second. Okay. So, did it run the standard one in 640 by 480 anyway? Let's try the low res version. Okay, so that's a massive reduction in frame rate. Still looks playable, but it's nowhere near as fast. So I reckon this is going to come in around 20 frames a second. 25 maybe. 21 frames per second. Okay, still playable. Not as much fun as 60. All right, what else we got? We've got some information stuff here about the motherboard and the chipset and the graphics card. So let's have a look at K. So this is this information from Norton Utilities. So it's recognise it correctly. We wouldn't expect that. No very surprises there. It's recognised full capacity of the hard disk, all the memory. That's all fine. It's recognised it as DOS 7.1. So it's obviously familiar with the Windows 95. So nothing really in here that's super exciting until we get to this screen. So this is giving the Norton information benchmark for processors, and it's giving it a score of nearly 800, which is pretty good. So that's 4 times faster than Pentium 66, which would make sense mathematically because it is essentially 4 times faster. This obviously is not incorporating any MMX optimizations. This is purely how many instructions can it do running whatever it is they're running. So it is about 4 times faster than the 66 megahertz Pentium, which is one of the very first Pentiums reduced. So quite a lot faster. So it's an order of magnitude faster than a 486 at 33 megahertz. Very good. Nothing very exciting there. So nothing really groundbreaking, but it was useful to get that Norton information benchmark score landmark. So let's do that. So that's interesting. So we've got some slight corruption here on the character set. The Virge isn't a very fast 3D accelerator. In fact, it's comically known as a 3D decelerator, but it is very good at compatibility in DOS, so I'm surprised this has happened. So in terms of performance, this is an older program. It obviously isn't aware of more modern chipsets. It thinks it's a 380 megahertz 386. It's recognized an ATI video card, which it isn't. So it says it performs like 186 megahertz AT with a 287 built in. So it's off the scale. Video 20,000 characters per second. That's pretty fast. So useful, but obviously out of the realms of useful for this particular benchmarking app. So Top Bench is a slightly different one. It runs it very quickly, so it's coming in about 255, 260. That sounds about right. SpeedSys. This is quite a useful little app. We call everything apps these days. Program is what we would have called it back in 1999. So it's recognised as Pentium MMX 233 megahertz. It's recognised that it's a P55C, so this is quite up to date. External clocks running at 66 megahertz. Recognise the memory, and the memory bandwidth it reckons is 221 megabytes per second. That will probably be the cached speed, and it's going through this at the moment. We'll talk about that in a second. It's recognised that hard drive correctly, and the chipset. So in terms of speed, it's rated it somewhere around correct. It's got a P55 listed there, so it's close to the Cyrix CX6X86233. It reckons it's slower than a P6200, and it's much faster than the Pentium 133. It's not quite twice as fast as the Pentium 133, would that make sense? But way faster than the 386 and the 486. Alright, so basically over here it's testing memory speed, and a couple of things you can tell from this graph is, one, that the onboard cache is 16 megabytes. The speed drops off massively. This is memory access speed as soon as you get past 16 megabytes. So that's the internal cache on the CPU. It then drops down to this level, which is, what, a fifth of the speed? And it carries on at that speed up until 512 megs. So this must have a secondary onboard 512 megs of cache, and it drops down to the actual real RAM speed, which should be in theory somewhere around 221 megabytes a second maybe. So maybe that isn't the cache speed. So yeah, the onboard cache is running at 423 megabytes per second. The second level cache is running at about 184, so just about 40%. And the base memory is at 130, so about another third slower. So it's done various seek tests. It's now testing the whole surface from the inner to outer. Okay, so it's finished testing the hard drive. So you've got some seek times and some random seek times and track-to-track seek times, and all these numbers are pretty decent actually for the time. In terms of speed, we've got the random, so we've got buffered read speed of 13 megabytes, but the kind of unbuffered speed is about 8. It drops, so it starts up about 10 megabytes a second, and it drops to about 6 megabytes per second, depending on which part of the drive you're accessing. And the average is about 8. So not bad numbers for a mechanical hard drive from that era. In terms of performance, it puts it ahead of things like the 1.5 and 2 gig drives. It's not as fast as some of these other drives. Not sure if those are SCSI drives maybe. Don't recognise the model codes. But these are quite small drives, and yet they're quite fast, so I'm guessing they're SCSI drives, maybe 10K SCSI drives. But it's performed reasonably well compared to some of these slightly smaller drives. Overall, I'm very happy with that. Great little bit of software, this one. We could do a cache check. It's just going to measure the RAM speed. So I've let it run, took about 5 minutes. It's giving us very similar numbers. It's recognised 16 kilobytes of level 1 cache, and it reckons it's about 320 megabytes a second, which is very similar to the other benchmarks. Same for the level 2 cache and direct memory access. Very, very similar numbers. So that's all good. So you have it. So that's the DOS benchmark pack from Phil's Computer Labs. Thank you, Phil. So what else have we got? Well, we definitely have Duke 3D. That should play pretty well on here. Okay, one thing I didn't realise is that Duke Nukem has a frame counter built into it. So all we have to do is, we've got Duke running in its standard 320 by 240 mode. If you type in DN rate, you get a counter in the corner here. So we're running at kind of around 130, 120 frames per second. Sometimes dropping to about 100, over 130 there. So I don't know how many, you can see that. 117. So in the open world it's about 120, in a closed world it's more like 150. It's a pretty decent performance. Anyway, so if we run setup, I'm running it in a different resolution. Let's see what that does to the frame rate. So I've got a choice, let's go for 640 by 480. So that's 4 times as many pixels, twice the resolutions in either direction. So we're back exactly where we were before. So it's tiny. Let's just adjust this a little bit. You can't really see it very well, but it's 29 frames a second at the moment. But visually much better, 40 frames a second. Yeah, so looking in there is about 40 frames a second. It drops about 35 frames here. Still around 40 frames a second. About 30 frames a second in here. So pretty playable. Let's see what happens if we push it to 800 by 600. You can feel it's a little bit more sluggish straight away, even on just on the intro, on the menu. Visually looks pretty good. Let's see what the frame rate is. So it's about 20 frames a second. So far, yeah, 25. Looking in here, yeah, it's about 25. So there is a significant penalty to have 800 by 600, 20, 25, cropping up to just 30 about there. So that's okay. It's not as playable as the other resolution. about 20 frames per second in this environment. So that's not quite so much fun. And I can't tell a visual difference between this and the 640 by 480. So I think 640 by 480 is probably the optimum resolution for this CPU. You can see out of the box that after we reboot into MS-DOS mode from Windows, it's not very good memory optimization. So we've only got less than 500K available to conventional memory. So we need to tweak that before we start running anything else a little bit more 640 constrained. Okay, a little bit of Microsoft Flight Simulator. Okay, so I think this is 640 by 480. Actually, no, it must be on the desktop set. It's 800 by 600. Okay, so this is 800 by 600. Updates are pretty smooth, pretty frequent. In terms of graphics quality, it's a little bit lacking. There's too much noise in the ground here. Let's see what happens when we get a little bit closer. Certainly the refresh rate seems pretty decent. I'm guessing that's around, getting on for 60 frames a second. The grain detail's pretty poor, but I don't know if that's because I haven't got the optical drive in. Dynamic scenery, let's turn that on. Pentium maximum quality high res is the performance mode selected, which is the best one that's available. And scenery, they're all switched on, brilliant. Okay, let's see if that makes any difference. So this is the first Windows native version of Flight Simulator. The previous one was a DOS version. Okay, let's put in the optical drive and see if it improves everything. I don't know how much of this is being performed by the 3D card or how much is going to be software only. So it's reading the optical drive. Not sure what difference it's going to make. Let's take off again and have a look. So it's still pretty responsive. The updates are pretty good. This is updating slowly. That's one of the configuration options. The scenery still looks a little bit tatty. Let's get a little bit higher, see if we can see it better. So yeah, I don't remember, last time I played this on a different computer, I don't remember the scenery being as poor as that. That may be related to the video card. So this Virge DX is an improved version of the original Virge, but it's not the best version of the Virge. And its 3D performance is pretty poor. But I'm happy with that, that's pretty decent. It's a little bit less smooth. Looking out the side views. But that's okay. A little bit of glitching as well, actually. Go probably full screen, see if that makes any difference. Hasn't made it any better, hasn't made it any worse, I don't think. So the other thing I want to look at is Combat Flight Simulator. I used to play the heck out of this when I was running a Pentium 3. So this may be a little bit too much for a Pentium 1, but let's find out. So it wants the CD, that's not a problem. We have the box. I used to play this online all the time with a friend of mine, and he used to have a tiny machine. If you've seen one of my other videos, I'll put a link up here somewhere. If you've seen one of my other videos, we've got a Pentium 3 tiny PC in the archive. Have a look at that. We need to do some more more videos on that. But yeah, we used to play this a lot. So it says it requires Windows 95, so it was before Windows 98. So it's about the right age for this processor. The minimum specs are Pentium 133, so we should be fine. We should be fine. As you can see, performance of the graphics is better in terms of the quality, but the frame rate has dropped horrendously. So that's probably 3 to 4 frames a second. And so I don't think this is going to be playable. Yeah, so there was a complete 0 frames a second moment there. I'm not sure exactly what it was unhappy about. So this is just about playable, but it's not fun. And I suspect I'm going to get killed. Graphics much better. Okay, so this came out in late 96 and this came out in late 98. So there's a 2-year gap in terms of capabilities and what the PC could be expected to be performing, and you can see that in the graphics. 2 years later, things are significantly improved, but we now have an unplayable frame rate. It's probably 1/10 of what it was in the other one. Sounds a shame. That was a really great game. Very, very time consuming at the time I was playing it. So we played Duke 3D in DOS, and there was a quick game of Doom in DOS. The Ultimate Doom comes with a Windows 95 port. Let's see how that performs. Okay, yeah, it's not bad. It's pretty playable. So in terms of frame rate, the image quality is a little bit better as well, actually, because it's probably playing at a higher resolution. When we played the DOS version, it's fixed at 320 resolution, so this is inevitably a little bit better. Yeah, so it's not super smooth, but it's definitely playable. Somehow the controls seem slightly poor. I'm not great at this game anyway, but it seems a little bit more clunky, a little bit laggy in the control response. It might just be my imagination. But overall, seems playable. Yeah. So basically, as far as the processor goes, I'm happy with this. I think as the last Pentium, before they moved on to the Pentium 2 architecture, which was based on the Pentium Pro, I think this is actually performing pretty good. I think that the total spec of this system, aimed at business as it was, because it's a Dimension, it's the kind of office/work version rather than the home/retail version. The fact that it's got this Virge DX chipset in it is not a surprise. It gives perfectly good, decent image quality on DOS and in Windows. It's got some 3D acceleration features for very basic 3D acceleration, but in terms of a gaming machine, the thing that's holding this back the most is not the hard drive or the RAM, but it's definitely that graphics chipset. Now, hopefully you found this video interesting. Just a brief view of some DOS and some Windows gaming on this chipset. What I have got in store is some upgrades to this system. For example, we've got a couple of new graphics cards we can try in here. Now we're limited a little bit because we haven't got an AGP slot, we've only got PCI. So we either have to buy a really expensive 3D accelerator that's PCI only, and those are currently out of my reach. But we have got some kind of intermediate options that are probably going to be better than the Virge, both in terms of 3D features and in terms of 3D performance. So look out for a future video on those, but I hope you enjoyed this, the last Pentium, the 233 MMX from Intel before they moved over to the Pentium 2. If there's any games you want me to try on this system or benchmark on this system, please let me know. I'd be very happy to do that. Okay, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to do that, and we'll see you next time.